routine hearing. This was an indictment delivered in 5 minutes flat. Congresswoman Delia Ramirez walked into that committee room with one objective: put Secretary Kristi Noem on record. And she didn't waste a second. She started with a trap. Not a political trap, a constitutional one. Is the judiciary a co-equal branch of government? Yes or no? Is Congress a co-equal branch? Yes or no? Does Congress hold the power of the purse under Article I? Yes or no? One by one, Secretary Noem answered yes. And that's when Ramirez lowered the hammer. Because once Noem affirmed the constitutional framework, Ramirez pivoted. If you agree Congress controls appropriations, if you agree the executive must follow the law, then why, she asked, have you been acting as if those limits don't apply? From there, it wasn't questioning. It was a prosecution.
Gentlelady's time has expired. I now recognize Ms. Ramirez for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Chairman. Secretary, it's good to see you. I'm going to go straight to the questions because I have a lot of them. Let me start just following up with Congressman Goldman about judiciary. Do you agree that the judiciary is a co-equal branch of government and it is your obligation as a member of the executive branch to honor decisions made by the highest court of the land? Yes or no, Secretary?
We are abiding by all federal judges' orders, absolutely.
So, yes, it's a co-equal branch of government. Okay, well, let me ask you a follow-up question to that. Do you agree that Congress is a co-equal branch of government, and it is your obligation as a member of the executive branch to honor legislation and appropriations duly authorized by Congress? Yes or no?
Yes, that's why I'm thrilled to work.
Well, let me ask you the follow-up question here, because I have a lot of them. Do you agree that Article 1 of the Constitution gives Congress the power of the purse? Yes or no?
Yes, it is a duty.
Do you believe that, let me ask you another follow-up, it's just yes or no. Do you believe you have the power to disregard congressional appropriations and unilaterally repurpose funds that have been duly appropriated by Congress? Yes or no?
Ma'am, we are not doing that.
So the answer to you is no. All right, well, it was a yes or no, Secretary. Let me continue. Interestingly, you said no. But since you've been Secretary, you have repeatedly disregarded the law. You have illegally impounded funds that Congress appropriated and that your branch of government must implement pursuant to the law. Yet you've closed offices established in law, including the Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, the Office of the Immigration Detention Ombudsman, the Office of the Citizenship and Immigration Services, and you've canceled contracts for programs authorized in law, including shelter and service programs and citizenship and integration grants. You've obstructed and roughed up members of this committee as they attempted to conduct congressional oversight, and then you vilified them. But my question is, if they were so bad, why were they allowed to go in after to conduct oversight? Let me just continue. You redirected funds to terrorize our communities. You created taxpayer-funded political propaganda campaigns to terrorize families and children who don't sleep at night because of the terror of those commercials that you are putting out there. You hold sick, disrespectful press conferences in my state where, let me be clear, you are not welcome. You corruptly used emergency authority to avoid procurement to make Trump's private prison donors richer by directing $45 billion for them to expand ICE detention centers. You defunded work to address real threats to the homeland, all while you pursued college newspaper editors, labor leaders, and even a Harvard scientist who failed to declare frog embryos at the airport. Clearly, we don't have time for all my questions, so I have 13 pages worth of questions that I will be submitting to the record that I expect you and the administration to answer. But here is my final question to you. When you took your oath, did you swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America? Yes or no?
Yes, I did.
So I find that laughable. You don't behave like someone who takes that oath seriously. And let me tell you why. We don't live in a dictatorship or a monarchy. Trump's will is not the guiding doctrine of this nation, and our country is not a playground for his or your twisted authoritarian fantasies. We are a democracy. We defend the Constitution and we affirm the rule of law. We respect the co-equal branches of government and we uphold our rights, even when we disagree. The foundation of our nation is based on a core set of constitutional rights upon which our prosperity, our pluralism, and our peace depend on it. You, however, have been leading this work for 116 days. And in that time, you have profiled and dehumanized our neighbors. You've betrayed our constitutional commitment to due process. You've deported United States citizens. You've undermined the courts. You've broken the law. You've engaged in corruption. And you've weaponized the immigration system to violate civil rights. As Senator Murphy perfectly stated, your department is out of control. But you're responsible. You have betrayed the sacred fundamentals of your oath. And I believe to my core that you are not fit to hold the office. And I again, to your face, demand your immediate resignation, and I put it and place it on the record for all of us to see. With that, Chairman, I yield back.
Generally yields. Mr. Gabarino is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Secretary, thank you so much for being here today. I'm the chairman of the Subcommittee on Cybersecurity Infrastructure Protection, so I work with CISA a lot.
Ramirez accused Noem of illegally impounding congressionally approved funds. She accused her of closing offices created by law, including civil rights and immigration oversight divisions. She accused her of redirecting billions toward expanding ICE detention centers. She accused her of using emergency authority to bypass procurement rules. She accused her of terrorizing immigrant communities with taxpayer-funded political messaging. And then she escalated. She said Noem had undermined the courts, broken the law, engaged in corruption, weaponized immigration enforcement, deported us citizens. And finally, she demanded her resignation, not subtly, not rhetorically, directly. I believe to my core that you are not fit to hold the office. That's not a policy disagreement. That's a declaration of illegitimacy. Now, let's break down why this moment matters. First, Ramirez structured this confrontation strategically. She forced Noem to publicly affirm constitutional principles before accusing her of violating them. That creates contrast. Because once you say yes to respecting Congress and the courts, every allegation that follows sounds like hypocrisy. Second, this wasn't just about immigration policy. This was about separation of powers. Ramirez framed the entire exchange around whether the executive branch is ignoring congressional authority. That's a powerful argument, especially when voters are already uneasy about executive overreach. Third, the resignation demand changes the temperature. Lawmakers criticize secretaries all the time, but demanding resignation on the record escalates it into national political theater. And here's the broader context. The Department of Homeland Security sits at the center of immigration enforcement, border security, detention policy, and federal civil rights oversight. If Democrats successfully frame Noem's leadership as lawless or corrupt, it shifts the narrative from border enforcement to constitutional crisis. That's a big pivot. Now, to be clear, these are allegations. Noem did not admit wrongdoing in this exchange. She defended the department's compliance with federal judges, but she also avoided direct yes or no responses on some funding questions, which allowed Ramirez to seize the narrative. And perception matters. Politics is often about who controls the framing. Ramirez framed Noem not as tough on immigration, but as reckless with constitutional boundaries. She framed DHS not as protective, but as punitive and politicized. And she framed this administration's immigration strategy as authoritarian. That word, authoritarian, is not accidental. It signals a broader democratic strategy, shift the debate from policy disagreements to democracy versus executive power. When Ramirez said, "We don't live in a dictatorship," that wasn't just rhetoric. That was messaging. Because the 2024 and 2026 elections are not just being fought over border numbers. They're being fought over institutional trust. And here's the key question going forward. Does this hearing stay inside Washington? Or does it break out into the national conversation? If evidence surfaces backing up Ramirez's funding and procurement claims, pressure builds. If not, Republicans will frame this as partisan theatrics. But one thing is clear, Ramirez made sure this confrontation is now part of the public record. A direct accusation of corruption, a direct claim of constitutional betrayal, and a direct call for resignation. That's not routine oversight. That's political escalation. And when accusations reach that level, the story doesn't end when the gavel falls. It begins there. We'll be watching what comes next.